Okay, and the time is 9 a.m.
Okay, if everybody present, we got Smeltzer. I think we're all here.
Would you like a roll call?
Yes, roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Present.
Director Smelser. He says yes, he's muted, but he is there. Director Tresson,
Here.
Director Lewis,
Present.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Established
and
a quorum.
in our own way, let's all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, today is May the 19th, 2021. First item on the agenda, as always, is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item not on the agenda, now is the time. Anyone?
We do have a public comment from Miss Jane Davis. Go ahead, Miss Davis.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, good morning. I'd like to address a matter that I feel hasn't recently been given sufficient attention by this board. In December, TTSA was issued a notice of violation by ELAP. TTSA responded in January, and LaRue Griffin and Mike Peak have both told you that the violations have been cleared and no further action is required. But like many things they've told you, that's not quite true. Because of a technicality that they exploited, they were able to put off responding to some of the violations from ELAP. So currently, no further action is required, until 2024, that is. But in a little over 2 years from now, they're going to have to face up to explaining exactly how they plan to ensure that the laboratory is, and I quote, free from any undue internal and external commercial, financial, and other pressures and influences that may adversely affect the quality of their work. I would strongly urge you to read the ELAP response and then answer this question. Why do you, as board members, think that it's totally okay for TTSA to refuse to come up with such a plan immediately? Yes, technically they can avoid it for now, but how does the Truckee River and our community benefit from allowing TTSA's management to exert undue internal pressures and influences that may adversely affect the quality of the laboratory's work for the next 2.5 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. And next public comment we have from Pippin Mater. Go ahead, Pippin.
Hi guys, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. I'll start my public comment by bringing up the recent newspaper article I read in Moonshine. It was about the Tahoe Donner PUD and all the blatant dysfunction and nepotism there. And it was pretty shocking to read because honestly, you could switch out some of the names and it could have been about TTSA. What is it with these special districts in the Tahoe Truckee area? Special district boards are there to make sure the public funds are used wisely in a way that the voters want. And if they aren't, the voters can vote them out. Having attended each of your district's board meetings for the last year, I know that each of your districts has fairly major issues. Alpine Springs has a fire hydrants with no water pressure. The 2 government employees on this board, that being Blake and Dan, advocated for COVID relief for their own agencies. Olympic Valley and North Tahoe are starting to ask pointed questions of their TTSA representative. You guys, as a TTSA board, hire people to make sure that all the recommendations or requirements are met and that the public is confident that their money and environment are being taken care of. Based on this board packet, it appears that you are all of a sudden very interested in flow meters, which would never have happened if it wasn't for public comment and articles in the press about the shortcomings. This kind of playing catch up all the time doesn't instill confidence. A good bellwether for how things are going is how many people are retiring. As I understand it, there's another one this month. It seems that it is very easy to predict retirements. Everyone just retires the second they turn 50. In the end, I ask that you make changes, both big and small, that will force TTSA to make the changes that are needed for the public to gain trust in you as a board. Without that change, the only way for there to be change is through the ballot box. And because of how you are not directly elected, that could result in substantial collateral damage to your co-board members on your specific boards. Finally, I do have some asks. I ask that the community be part of the master plan development. It is due out quite soon, or at least a draft of it. As far as I know, the public has not been able to look at it. This, again, does not instill trust. It makes it look like the board is rubber stamping and does not have or want to have any vision for the future of TTSA. And second, I ask that the new lab manager be moved out from under operations, like it is in every other.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Pippin. You have a 1-minute warning. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right now, Rochelle?
Go ahead. You may
Great.
continue.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I'll just go back at my two specific asks. First, I asked me community part of the master plan. I don't know when you lost me, but
As part of the lab director.
great. Second, I asked that the new lab director be moved out from under operations, like it is in every water treatment plant in the state, and that you get monthly updates from him as part of your regular board meeting. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And I have no one else raising their hand for public comment.
Okay. Seeing none and hearing no others for public comment, I'd like to move on to professional achievements and awards and anniversaries.
Thank you, President Cox. I'll be filling in for Vicki today. She's out. First thing I'd like to address are the anniversaries of Mr. Anthony Salinas, who's Mechanic 2, and Rochelle Chavez, who's the Executive Assistant Board Clerk. They're both celebrating their 5-year anniversary this month in May. Just to give a brief history, like I said, Mr. Anthony Salinas is a Mechanic 2, started here as Mechanic 1. He is one of our junior mechanics. So you're looking at an individual here who has a lot of potential as being part of the leadership team. He's doing a good job. So I just wanted to acknowledge his good work there. As to Rochelle Chavez, it's good to have an executive assistant, board clerk, to assist me more, as well as the board of directors and the needs of our department managers. So I wanted to give an appreciation and thank you and a good job well done for them and their tenure here at 5 years. With that, I will also now bring into the introduction of Mr. Jason Hayes. He is our newest employee as the laboratory director. He started at the beginning of May. I've met with his staff and got some feedback from them, and they have described him as being a good fit, very experienced and very knowledgeable. And with that, I asked that he join and introduce himself and provide a little bit of history and background so the board is aware of his experience. With that, Rochelle, would you allow Jason to provide some information?
Sure. I have promoted him to panelist, and you should see him at the bottom of your screen.
Jason, if you don't mind, would you go ahead and provide a little bit of information about yourself? Thank you, sir.
Good morning, directors, President Cox. So as mentioned, my name is Jason Hayes. I've been working in the environmental lab community for close to 20 years now. Started out working in college laboratories as TA, and while I was in school, I was doing internships at various water agencies, water districts, regional planning agencies, that kind of stuff. So I graduated in 2003 from Cal State San Bernardino with a degree in environmental studies. And then that same year, I started working at LA County Sanitation Districts. While I worked about 14 years there, while I was there, I had the opportunity to work in about 5 different laboratories. 3 of them I worked in the capacity of lead analyst, and got an opportunity to see a lot of new technologies, a lot of exposure to methodologies and quality control programs. And then 4 years ago, I made a transition over to a water district in Elsinore and started out there as an analyst and quality manager, and worked a lot on quality management systems, SOPs, all that fun stuff. And then I was promoted to the laboratory director of that agency and served in that capacity for almost 3 years, and took the opportunity that was given me to come up here and enjoy the beautiful weather and be part of a great team. And yeah, so that's my background in a nutshell.
Very good, Jason. Thank you very much for filling us in on your background, and welcome aboard. Any other comments, Director Lewis?
Welcome aboard. Good. I mean, as far as your first, I mean, you've only been on there for a couple weeks, but what are you looking at as far as the lab director, and as far as your first duties that you see you need to fulfill?
Yeah, so currently I'm going to be spending a lot of time initially getting myself up to speed, getting all of my documentation as an analyst. It's difficult to make arguments for how things change or why they need to change if I'm not fully trained in the first place. So that's my first objective, is to get fully trained on all the methods. I've performed them all, but it's important that I know the lab specifics, all that stuff. And then it's a high priority of mine to get compliant with the new state regulations as quickly as possible, hopefully much earlier than we need to be. And so we've got lots of direction on that. The ELAP community, they've been very supportive with that. So my intent is just to get rolling, start making the procedures, policies, all the stuff necessary to get us up to speed with the new regs and continual improvement.
Thank you.
Director Wilkins, any comments?
Welcome aboard, Jason. Glad to have you, and look forward to you getting settled in and taking us forward. Thanks.
Director Treson.
Jason, welcome. Excited to have you on board. Interesting background you have. LA Sands, obviously a lot bigger than we are, but so probably have to put a lot of hats on here that maybe you got specialization down there, but get ready for snowy winters. Hopefully you're aware this isn't Southern California. We live in the mountains, so good luck with that. And yeah, glad to have you here and look forward to hearing good things from the lab.
And Director Smeltzer, any comments, please? Better unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you. Welcome. And my question is, you've worked in several labs, and relating to what our public comment there, Pippin Mater was talking about, direct reporting to the board. Has that been your policy in other labs? Is that how things have gone?
I'm familiar with kind of a system where the lab director would be available as needed to provide information, but I mean, it's obviously not outside the realm of possibility. But yeah, what my experience has been, generally lab director kind of makes comment available when necessary, as needed, basically.
Yeah, I would like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, once again, Jason, welcome aboard. All right, moving along to the consent agenda items, section 4. If everybody has had a chance to review the items in the consent agenda items, and there are no questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Questions, David?
I'll
Yeah,
make the motion to approve.
go ahead. And I would second that. And then the question would be, I was looking at how much we've spent on the COVID relief. We're up at 187,000. Is there more to come?
Dave, I was going to address it in the staff report for the administrative department. We have about 186,000 for the automatic relief. And I think approximately 14,000 in the application with a total sum of about 200,000. So the automatic relief is complete. There will be more application as they are submitted to us. So there may be more of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Blake, go ahead.
Just in the payment of bills, I did notice under the automatic relief program, a couple public agencies subject to that, Tahoe City PUD, Placer County. I assume, LaRue, those were because those agencies have some type of food service, a restaurant seat, something. I'm just trying to figure out what component of those public agencies met the criteria for automatic relief.
Yeah, I don't know the details for each one. I do know that the automatic included the restaurant seats, bar seats, churches, theaters. So just by process of elimination, they would have had to included seats.
Okay, so
to Celeste in the billing, and we did anticipate that some of the public districts agencies would have some facilities that included that.
Okay, any other questions on the consent agenda items 1, 2, or 3? Anyone? We have a motion on the floor and a second. Rochelle, did you get the motions logged?
Yes, I did. I have a motion from Lewis and a second from Smelser. Ready
Okay,
for roll call?
Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes,
Director Tresson,
yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is section 5, regular agenda items. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of April the 21st, 2021. If everyone has had a chance to review this exhibit and they find all entries are correct, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Any additions or alterations?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
I'll second it.
Moved by Wilkins, seconded by Lewis. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
and Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is the discussion of the actuarial estimates of the OPEB liability changes from the adopted of California Government Code 22893.
Yes, again, I'll be filling in for Vicky today. A few months ago, there was direction from the board of directors to provide a cost analysis of potential changes to retiree health plan benefits, in addition to proceeding with the resolution to potentially adopt the vesting schedule. So what we did was we contacted Total Compensation Systems Incorporated, who have performed other actuarial studies for us to perform an analysis on the cost effects of potential changes, which will include a vesting schedule and a PEMCA minimum plan. So with that, I've asked Mr. Jeff Kisich I hope I said that correctly, to attend today's meeting and to provide his analysis and address any board questions or comments that you might have. And then at the conclusion of this presentation, if there's direction to whether we want to proceed with the changes to adopt the vesting schedule. The board or the staff will return next month with such resolution. So with that, Rochelle, if you don't mind allowing Jeff to share his screen and commence with this presentation. You're muted right now, Rochelle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jeff, and I went ahead and made you a co-host as well, so you can share your screen and video.
Oh, gee, that's way too much responsibility. Thank you. It's good to be here this morning. You know, I'm not sure exactly how much discussion there's been in the past, but the write-up that I did addressed 3 different options, 2 main options, and then a sub-option. So let me cover the section 22893 service schedule first.
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, is it possible to show your screen and have that document shared so the board can see that?
Gee, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Let's see how, I'm not sure how to do that. Let's see. Okay.
So if you have it on your desktop and
I
you
do
just,
right now, yeah.
okay, you could just hit the share screen at the bottom of your Zoom
I
window.
see, there we go.
Okay, and then select, it'll pull up all the windows available on your screen and you just click on the one you want.
Sure. All right, did that do it?
Perfect.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So, as was mentioned, one of the main reasons for this is to comply with Government Code Section 7507. And basically, Government Code 7507 says that anytime you change benefits for retirees, whether it be pension benefits or in this case, retiree health benefits, OPEB stands for other post-employment benefits, and other post-employment benefits means anything other than pension. So in this case, we're talking about retiree medical benefits provided through the CalPERS medical plan. So, you know, to the extent that there's the board is considering making changes to the retiree medical plan, Government Code Section 7507 requires that an actuary assess the the fiscal implications, and that it be presented and considered at a board meeting. And so obviously that's what we're doing now. Excuse me. So what's it? The first item that's at issue is Government Code Section 22893. Government Code Section 22893 allows an agency to provide benefits for retirees in a little bit different way than what is required generally under the general rules of what's known as PEMCA, which are the sections of the government code governing the CalPERS medical plan. The normal rule, which the district is under, or the agency's under right now, is that anybody who retires from the district under CalPERS, regardless of their service, is entitled to have their full premiums paid for life under the CalPERS medical plan. So that means that you could have somebody theoretically work for the agency for a day, and if they had come to the agency from another from other employment where they were fully vested for pension benefits under CalPERS, they would be entitled to have lifetime medical benefits that would all be paid for by the agency they retire from, which would be TTSA. There are a number of exceptions to that, one of which is the one we're talking about here, which is section 22893, which says that instead of simply requiring that somebody retire, that you can apply a different service schedule that first of all requires a minimum of 20 years of service in CalPERS pension plan, not in no fewer than 5 years of which are with TTSA. Furthermore, I'm sorry, no less than 10 years, not 20, no less than 10 years. And then what happens is if you have from 10 to 20 years of service, then the amount of benefit may be lower. It's prorated based on your filed employer contribution, which I'll get to in a minute. So it's a much less permissive service schedule, and in individual cases, it may excuse me, reduce the amount of benefit that's being paid, particularly for anybody who retires with fewer than 20 years service. So this is the section that we evaluated. The section that we evaluated, or the version that we evaluated, is one where the agency would change their filed contribution, employer contribution, to what's known as the state level. And the state level, it's defined a little bit differently in the statute, but basically it's the same contributions that the state makes for their employees. And I mentioned them here, I listed them here in the document in the second paragraph. You'll see that it's for this year, the state contribution levels are just under $800 a month for single coverage, $1,519 for two-party, and $1,937 for family coverage. Just for information, if those levels were to be applied to your current retiree group, 22 retirees would continue to receive their full benefits. 7 retirees would be having less than the full premium covered at these levels. For most of those retirees who would have less than the full premium covered, paid for by the agency, that would be a temporary thing, because that typically applies to retirees who are under the age of 65 or who have a spouse under the age of 65. So for the coverage for Medicare supplement coverage, these levels cover 100% of the premium. So we did an evaluation of what the impact would be if you were to move to section 22893 service schedule and move to the state contribution level from the current policy. The first thing we looked at is that when you change to 22893, this new service schedule, that only applies to future hires, people hired after you adopt this provision. So anybody who's a current retiree or a current employee would still be protected at the old service schedule, meaning they simply have to retire under CalPERS to receive the benefit. However, the change in the employer contribution to the state contribution level is retroactive. It applies not only to future hires, but to all current active employees and to current retirees. So because of that, we were asked to evaluate 2 different options. Under the first option, that contribution change would apply retroactively with no mitigation. So there would be nothing that would, and so you'd have a reduction in benefit for certain, like I said, it looks like perhaps 7 current retirees, and then future retirees would receive, some of them would receive less benefit than they otherwise would have. Because of those benefit reductions, we determined that for future under that scenario, which is in the second paragraph under the estimated liability change there at the bottom, near the bottom of that page, there would be an immediate reduction in liability of about $1 million for the agency. And there would also be a reduction in the accrual expense, the annual accrual basis expense by almost $500 per employee per year. That would apply only to current employees. Most agencies that we've dealt with that make this change will protect either their current retirees or all current employees, or sometimes only those employees who are retirement eligible at the time of the change. But usually they will protect those people. The way you protect the certain people from those benefit reductions or the potential benefit reductions is by establishing a separate plan that is outside of the CalPERS plan. We refer to it as a supplemental plan. And so what you can do is you can carve out some or all of the current retirees and current active employees and say that you will continue to pay for benefits up to the level that you have historically for those people. That's outside of CalPERS, meaning that the only way to accomplish that would be to set up a separate plan, not difficult to do. The main practical impact of that is that you would have any retiree who's affected by the benefit reduction, you would have to arrange to reimburse them for the difference between the current plan and the new plan. So it's a little bit more paperwork. It's a little more inconvenient for any of the retirees who are affected. But there are a lot of agencies that do that. If you were to protect everybody who is currently employed at the time that you make the change and or currently retired, then there would be no immediate liability reduction, but any future hire, your cost would be about $500 a year less while they're working for those people. So that would set the stage to basically freeze your current liability, what it is currently, and then reduce the increases in liability in the future if you were to adopt that, the option where you protect, the current retirees and or active employees. I don't know whether it would make sense to first pause here, LaRue, and let anybody who has questions ask questions about this.
I think that would be a good opportunity. Does the board have any questions on the presentation so far before we proceed?
Thanks, Jeff. This is Blake Treson. LaRue, I just clarifying, this is a little bit different than maybe what we had discussed previously with Vicky. So I'm just trying to get clear the change from what we had previously discussed. It sounded like in the past we had talked about adopting perhaps a resolution that put the vesting schedule on new employees, but had incorporated in it a continuation of benefits for existing retirees and existing employees. And it sounds like you can't just kind of do a one-stop shop and do that with CalPERS. You have to, if you adopt the vesting, it goes to everybody, and then you have to have this supplemental plan to continue those benefits for existing retirees and existing employees. Is that correct?
It's actually a little different than that. The vesting schedule is prospective. And it's not really, it's more a service schedule. I like to differentiate between a vesting schedule and a service schedule. Under a vesting schedule, normally when you reach the vesting point, then your benefits are vested and can't be taken away. But that's not the way CalPERS works. If, for example, you have 20 years of service and you leave the agency and you're, say, age 48, you have no vested benefit. So there's no obligation of the agency to provide benefits, retiree health benefits, to somebody who doesn't retire from the agency in many circumstances. So I like to think of it as a service requirement, but the service requirement is prospective and it only applies to future hires. It's the employer contribution piece of it that's retroactive. So you can adopt the section 22893 service schedule without changing your contribution rate. But if you do that, the contributions would cover the full premium for all future hires as well. CalPER, the PEMCA, the law does not allow you to establish different employer contributions for different employees. Everybody has to have the same contribution level regardless of hire date. So the only way you can differentiate the contributions you make is by establishing what I call a supplemental plan for the people you want to protect. And those are the people who are on board currently that you were referring to.
And to add on to Blake, Blake, you are correct. That's what the conversations have been. In discussions with CalPERS, they provided us a template that they'd like us to adhere to for any amendments to retiree health benefits. And as part of that, as Jeff said when he started this, one of the requirements was to provide this actuarial. So we've kind of broken it up into two sections because previously it was one direction, we come back with the resolution to adopt what we've been calling the vesting schedule and then do a cost comparison. This will meet the code 7507 requirements per the resolution from CalPERS. So getting with this presentation where we're meeting that requirement. When it comes to the conversation with CalPERS on whether moving forward, do we have to have a supplemental plan as Jeff is describing, or there's no change to current retirees and employees right now, meaning only affecting future employees. CalPERS has provided a different direction on that. And we placed calls in with them to go ahead and see if we can get some clarification. So the direction we still want to proceed with is to do the vesting schedule. Jeff has described it as a service schedule, but essentially for our previous conversation, the vesting schedule, to where it does not affect current employees and current retirees, no changes to them, and only affects future employees moving forward. If CalPERS is continuing their direction, that their resolution will provide that direction, that's what we'll bring back. If they come back and align with Jeff and state that there has to be a supplemental plan, we'll have to have another discussion to see how we can implement that and make sure that we still meet the requirements of fulfilling our obligations to existing retirees and current staff.
Hey, Dale. I've got
Go ahead.
comment if that's okay. So when we were talking about this a couple of months ago, I recall this dialogue about having to have a supplemental plan. And at the time, we were hoping we would not need to administer a supplemental plan. And my understanding was that if one of the things about not having to administer a supplemental plan was that if we went with 5 years of service at TTSA as a minimum to be vested, that we would not need a supplemental plan. Because at the time, one of the options that was at least in my mind was 10 years minimum service at TTSA to be vested for post-retirement healthcare with TTSA. And the reason I was comfortable with not pushing for that was my understanding was that the 10-year minimum service time at TTSA was going to require us to administer a supplemental plan. So if we're going to have to administer a supplemental plan anyway, I would propose that we look at a 10-year minimum time at TTSA before you're eligible for post-retirement health care. If we don't have to administer a supplemental plan, but that also means that we can only require 5-year minimum at TTSA, I would be okay with that. But if we're going to have to deal with a supplemental plan anyway, then I think we should be looking at a 10-year minimum service time at TTSA.
Yeah, I could shed a little bit of light on that. And basically, even though you'd have a supplemental plan, it would be very, very different, and it would affect a lot more people by a lot more if you did, you know, say a 10-year vesting plan or a 5-year vesting plan for that matter. The way that the way PEMCO works, and we have literally hundreds of clients that have their retiree benefits through PEMCO, so we probably have more expertise in this than anybody else out there, probably including the people you talk with at CalPERS. And the reason I'm sensitive to this is I've seen agencies adopt 22893 based on what they understood to be the case and get blindsided when it actually was implemented because CalPERS told them something that wasn't true in terms of the way it gets administered. But I'll illustrate, you know, we'll take the 10-year vesting schedule as an illustration because I think it's important for the board to understand enough understanding of the way PEMCO works to be able to navigate it, because the fact is you do have an awful lot of flexibility, but it comes at a price. And so generally under the way CalPERS works, it has a general rule that you're subject to. And that is that you provide the same benefits for retirees that you do for actives, and it's based on the definition of an annuitant. And an annuitant is anybody receiving a pension from either CalPERS or any number of other pension systems that PEMCO recognizes, or anybody receiving a pension under a joint and survivor annuity. You know, that is a spouse of a deceased pension retiree. That's the general rule. That's what you're operating under right now. Other than that, you have certain exceptions. And the 22893 is one of those exceptions that you can avail yourself under. But the section 22893 comes with a lot of baggage, one of which is that you have to use an employer contribution of a minimum of the state contribution level. And regardless of what anybody at CalPERS tells you, it is not legal for you to establish a contribution level that varies between people in the same bargaining unit, or if you don't have a bargaining unit, between people, any employees, none, zero, under any circumstances, period. The end. There's no alternative, no matter what somebody's telling you. And so the maximum flexibility you have is to establish under section 22892 statutory minimum employer contributions, which is the subject of the second part of my analysis. And this goes back to now, 25, 30 years, where the statutory minimum contribution for years going back to the 1960s was $16 per month per person. And then mainly because of initiatives by the Firefighters Association, that was changed and phased in over a 5-year period to increase the statutory minimum contribution that you must make to $97, and then it was indexed to the medical component of the CPI beyond that point. And currently it is at $143 per month per employee. So you can establish your minimum, the employer contribution that you file with CalPERS at any level you want, subject to a minimum of $143. And I have lots of clients who do that. They have their contribution filed as the statutory minimum of $143 a month. Subject to that minimum, you can establish a supplemental plan to do anything that you want. So let's take a 10-year service requirement in that context. What would happen is if you adopted the section 22892 minimum, then everybody who retires would have the opportunity to enroll in CalPERS regardless of service. Again, they could work for you for 1 day. And if they retire from CalPERS, you would be on the hook to pay $143 a month for their lifetime, as well as the lifetime of their surviving spouse under a joint and survivor annuity. But that's far less than the benefit that you're paying now. On top of that, you could layer a supplemental plan with no restrictions. You could do whatever you want. So if, for example, you established a 10-year minimum service requirement to get the same benefit people are getting now, you can do that. The only thing that means is that when people retire, if they have a premium of $2,000 a month, which you have people currently, retirees who have per premium of more than $2,000 a month, then what would happen is you, the agency, would be billed for $143, and the remaining $1,857 would be taken out of the employee's pension check. Or if the pension check isn't big enough, CalPERS would bill them for the balance. And so for you to fill in the difference between what you pay now and that statutory minimum, you would need to set up, a process to reimburse that retiree for that amount that they're paying out of pocket that you are paying on their behalf. The difference between that and the state contribution level we've been talking about is that under the state contribution level, if the current maximum is $1,500 for two-party coverage, then they're gonna, but you would have paid $2,000, you're gonna reimburse them $500 that's gonna be taken out of their check instead of having $1,800 taken out of their check. So for a retiree, depending on their circumstances, and depending on the arrangements you make to reimburse them for the difference, that can, kind of rock a retiree's world if there's a gap in the time between the money's taken out of their check and the time that they get that reimbursement. So I just like to make sure, because I've had, like I said, a number of clients go into this without fully understanding the ramifications and either relying on CalPERS representations and being blindsided. I just like to do what I can to make sure that clients fully understand the ramifications of a particular change.
So if we have a 5-year minimum service credit, what's the difference between a 5 years minimum service credit and a 10-year minimum service credit in terms of that issue?
There's none. Basically, you would still be in order to effectuate that, you would have to establish a statutory, change or have a board resolution to establish the statutory minimum contribution level, and then you'd be in a position of reimbursing retirees for the difference between that $143 a month and whatever premium amount you wanted to cover for them. So now again, typically, the difference between the state contribution level and the premium for most employees, like I said, it's most employees fit within that of your current people. You only have 7 current, and most of those, the fact that there's a difference between the premium and the state contribution level is a temporary phenomenon, but it still is a thing. And the dollar amount at stake is much, much lower than it would be if you adopt statutory minimum contributions. But 5-year service period is still not in compliance with PEMCA, which means that the only way for you to do that is through a supplemental plan.
So the only way if we're going to have minimum service criteria at TTSA, we have to set up a supplemental plan if we're going to give anything beyond the minimum.
The only other alternative to that is to get a lobbyist to introduce legislation on your behalf as a named entity, which, a couple dozen mainly large, public agencies have done. So if you look at PEMCA, there are, quite a few sections that have named public agencies there that have one of my clients was BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit. They did that. I have North Orange County Community College District, which did that. I have a number, but they tend to be very large organizations because there's obviously an expense associated with lobbying and getting a law passed to provide a special vesting period for your agency. The only other generic one apply is section 22895, which applies only to school employers. So you guys are not able to invoke that one.
Jeffrey, this is Blake. The 22893 kind of state-defined service credit or vesting schedule, you're saying that we only have 7 employees, retirees that are not Medicare eligible and therefore would need the supplement to hit their premiums that are higher than the state level. But didn't you say that this applies to active and retirees? And we've got, 50 employees at TTSA currently that their premiums, whether they're a single +1 or a family, exceed all 3 of those state-defined levels.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why a lot of agencies end up not realizing what they've done until sometimes years after the fact. This has to do with the way these things are. Sorry. I have a new phone. I can't figure out how to suppress the ringer on it. This has to do, part of the issue has to do with the way premiums are billed. So for active employees, the agency pays the entire premium for all employees, regardless of your policy. And it's up to the agency to withhold from people's paychecks any employee contribution amount. So CalPERS has no idea what you're doing for active employees. So, they don't know whether you're administering the employer contribution properly for active employees or not. And because the supplemental plan you could administer just through payroll, basically, they're not really involved and nobody knows the difference. It's only once somebody retires that this thing rears its head. That's why people can adopt something not knowing everything's going on swimmingly for active employees. And so for active employees, if you add a supplemental plan, it's easy to implement that without any disruption to active employees. You can establish a different employer contribution for active employees than you do for retirees. CalPERS is never going to know the difference, and it's going to be seamless for you and your employees in the agency. It's only retirees who end up being affected by this, because then employee contributions or retiree contributions are no longer withheld from payroll checks, they're withheld from pension checks.
So as Jeff stated, we have placed a call into CalPERS because he's brought up some points that were not relayed to us for other conversations with CalPERS. So we've had a call, like I said, we've got a call into, we have not heard back. And if we touched on a couple. We did the vesting schedules, which Jeff spoke on first, and then he rolled into the PEMCA, what we've been calling the PEMCA minimum. And then he's added the supplemental component, which is what we've been calling a hybrid. So the discussions we plan on intending on having with CalPERS and further follow with Jeff is to see which exactly is the direction and clarification on these plans. If there is if we can't proceed to where we can not affect current employees and retirees, then we just have what CalPERS is stating is just a simple resolution, which we need to confirm. If not, then we do have to come back with a hybrid plan, which would include the supplemental policy procedures on it. And then we can start dialing in and calling out what the board of directors would like to proceed with.
And by the way, there is an option where you could adopt the vesting schedule, but still maintain your current contributions, employer contributions. You don't have to adopt the state contribution level to adopt 22893. What 22893 says is that the employer contribution can't be less than the state contribution level, but it can be more. but obviously if the contribution level continued to be the state contribution level, there would be very little reduction in liability, current or future liability for the agency, because the vast majority of employees would still receive their full benefit if you maintain your current contribution policy for future hires. You would get very little cost reduction.
So we wanted to at least have the actuarial be presented, follow with some conversations with CalPERS. And if the direction, if we determine that we can't proceed, as you stated, Blake, where it was in line with previous conversations of maintaining current benefits for employees and current retirees, while only changing those new employees after a certain effective date, we would proceed with that. If the conversation comes to where CalPERS is not providing or has given us incorrect data, we need to come back at another board meeting and get some more information and direction on whether there's to be a supplemental plan, which employee benefit the board would like to take. So there's no action for today's meeting. It's more of informative, have the discussion, present the actuarial. Should CalPERS state that they can comply with the direction we wanted to go with.
So the question so thanks for this information. I guess the question I'd throw out to the other board members, the last time we discussed this, we were being told by CalPERS that if we went to effectively the kind of the state plan, that it would be seamless to us. We wouldn't need to set up a supplemental plan, and the amount of administration to us as TTSA would be fairly nominal. I think what we're hearing now is that may have been bad information that we got from CalPERS, and that if we're going to do anything to scale back those retirement healthcare benefits for future employees, that we're going to have to set up this side plan, if you will. If that's the case, does that affect any of the other board members' thinking on the minimum number of years that we think an employee has to work at TTSA before they're vested for anything above the PERS minimum? So I think no matter what, if we have an employee at TTSA, we're going to have to, and they retire, we got to pay them the PERS minimum, which is $143 a month. I think what I'm saying is if you've been a 10-year employee at TTSA, then we will, for future employees, be willing to pay more than that PERS minimum. Previously, when we talked about this, that was a 5-year date. So if you stayed 5 years at TTSA, you were eligible for higher levels of benefit. I'm proposing that if we're going to have to set up this side plan anyway, let's make the minimum tenure at TTSA to be 10 years before you're eligible for post-retirement benefits above the minimum.
What do you think, Director Lewis?
Well, provided we don't have to go through the legislative process to do that. I mean, you know, I'd certainly be in favor of that.
And it sounds like if we're going to, so it sounds like we're going to that
PEMCA minimum.
PEMCA minimum. And at that point, if we adopt the PEMCA minimum, you know, we create whatever kind of supplemental plan we want, you know, and it could be 10 years of TSD and TSA and 50%. I mean, we're not limited to anybody else's vesting schedule if we adopt the PEMCA minimum. And so it kind of, you know, if we want to follow that general guideline, we can, or if we want to rethink what kind of vesting schedule we want for new employees, you know, I mean, it could start at 5 years, but it's 25%, or, I mean, really anything under the sun is an option to us. So I do like the direction we're headed, in that we're trying to, I think, develop a, you know, post-employment benefit plan that is hopefully sustainable for the agency. It's just more complicated than we originally expected. And so, you know, as much as we need to keep moving down this path, you know, I think we need to do it, you know, with, you know, at the right speed to get the right plan. And this has been good information, LaRue, that you got from Jeff. And it sounds like Jeff's our expert, because I agree with Jeff. Getting information for CalPERS is always hard, and it's confusing, and it sometimes does change. So I'm glad we've got somebody who can give us a good answer. At this point, you know, I know you're looking for direction from us. You know, I'm not sure what direction.
If I may, based on past conversations, I think the schedule the board of directors seemed acceptable. We're starting 50% at 10 years, and at 20 years, 100% contribution going, and then having, I forget what it is, but 5% per year after that, equal to the CalPERS vesting schedule that they proposed. The only requirement difference was that we were going to ask that they have 10 years tenure at the agency before 5. So if we were to proceed with if we can do the very easy minimal effort on our part, I still recommend we proceed in that direction with the vesting schedule we were discussing. If that's possible, then we would come next month after validation that's possible next month with a resolution for adoption. If not, then I would like staff to come back with a resolution to adopt the PEMCA minimum with a vesting schedule set up like I discussed, 50% of 10 years, 100% of 20 years. And apply the PEMCA minimum. And that way we can still continue to keep this going. And then we would bring in supplemental, then we would adopt in addition with the PEMCA minimum independently, a supplemental plan to make sure that the current employees and current retirees are made whole.
Right.
Mhm.
That works for me.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Dan, sorry.
Well, my recollection of our conversation as a board about this was that we wanted to make sure that existing retirees were made whole with what they had been, what the commitment had been to them at the time they retired, which was effectively full health care. That existing employees that have been hired that may have chosen to come to us because we offer full health care upon retirement, that we would honor that commitment. But that for future employees, we wanted to kind of make it less generous. And, you know, the concern I always had was a person could work for another agency in PERS for 5 years or 10 years, transfer over to TTSA, and then retire from TTSA a few months later, and then we're on the hook for full lifetime health care after retirement, which doesn't seem fair to our ratepayers. I think if we're going to be paying for retirement health care out of our ratepayers' pockets, it should be for employees who have had a long tenure at TTSA. And that's the reason I think you got to be at TTSA for 10 years before you can get more than the minimum. And then you can grow from that. So I think what you outlined, LaRue, I would be supportive of. And I think there's good policy rationale and responsibility to our ratepayers with that approach.
Okay, Director Smeltzer, do you have any comments?
No, I'm liking the sound of LaRue's plan. I'm curious what Jeff would say to that plan, and if there will be a reduction down the road, a savings.
Yeah, the one thing that, to the extent that you were willing and able to go to the statutory minimum and sort of roll your own plan, there's another element of this that is very different. That I want to make sure that the board is aware of. The service schedule, the 50% to 100% in 10 to 20 years under 22893 does not apply to the premium. It applies to the contribution. And because of the way it works, you, even for somebody with 10 years service, you will end up paying 100% of the premium for Medicare supplement for life for people, not 50%, not 75, 100%, not 50%. And that's because of the way 22893 is worded. If you roll your own program, you would actually be able to set up that service schedule so that the percentages would apply to the premium, which would actually better reflect the differences in service for the retirees, and also actually save the agency money, which under the current is not being saved. So just to make clear, so you're clear on how this works. If you adopt 22893, notwithstanding the supplemental, plan issue, and right now the the single employer contribution is $798 per month. If somebody has 10 years of service, they qualify for 50% of that, which is $399. All of the single supplemental premiums are less than $399. And so you would pay 100% of the premium up to that cap of $399. You would not pay 50% of the premium. You would pay 100% of the premium up to 50% of this state contribution level. Whereas if you roll your own, you could have it set up so that if somebody had 10 years service, you would pay 50% of the premium. And that's very, very different from what 22893 does. So it gives you a lot more flexibility to really recognize service in a more direct fashion and save the agency money on that basis.
Jeff, do you have agencies that have adopted the plan that you just mentioned, that LaRue could reach out to and see their resolutions and talk to them about the practicality of implementing that?
I mean, I know, I've got lots of agencies that use a statutory minimum, and some of them will, for example, only pay for benefits to age 65 under their supplemental plan, or only pay for employee. There are a million different ones. I mean, it's the kind of thing that I don't have any like database where I can query it to see who's got that kind of a benefit. It's more a matter of me trying to go through my head and think of it. So I'm sure I do. I just, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody that I know of that does that.
We will look into it, Blake, and see if there's any other agencies or districts that are implementing it, and vet it out and see where issues or direction that might be able to help us with. As to the point Jeff was making on percentages of covering the state minimum versus the premium itself, the latter one he was referring to 50% of the premium. Is the board referring to 50% for the premium at 10 years of service, or 50% of the state contribution, which would often exceed the premium? I believe the conversations we've had in the past have been really tailored to the premium. So I just wanted to make sure there was clarification on that. As Jeff said, there is a substantial difference in costs there.
That was what was in my mind, was that we would pay for, and now what we're talking about is after 10 years of service, 50% of a retiree's premium. And then for every additional year of service, you could earn an additional 5%.
And to be clear, that's not what 22893 does.
So we may have to, that's how I interpret it, Dan, towards the premium. It may have to take us a different approach other than 2293. But the discussions give us more information. We're getting better direction. So if that's something the board would like to proceed with, we can return next month with it. I saw you raise your hand, Blake. I apologize.
I think that's a good direction. I like that. You know, I know if we go to that PEMCA minimum, you know, instead of 7 retirees currently that you would have to kind of work out that arrangement with, you probably have all your retirees that you'd have to. So just, I think when you come back, I think part of the analysis has to look at the kind of administrative burden on the district and the, you know, the, how that would also impact the retirees.
Exactly.
If
I agree.
we're trying to get them that, you know, trying to make up for that amount that's going to now be pulled out of their pension. And so,
Yeah,
sounds good, LaRue.
I would agree. So President Cox, there's no further feedback. I'll take that as direction to return next month after clarification from CalPERS, further working with Jeff and coming back with the option, if permissible by CalPERS, to proceed with the vesting schedule where there's minimal effort on our part to implement, meaning keeping the existing benefits for current retirees and current employees as is, only affecting future employees. And if that's not permissible, then coming back with a more further discussion or resolution based on accepting a PEMCA plan and discussion and acceptance of a supplemental plan.
Well, what I'd like to see, LaRue, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, is to take these scenarios and put them down on paper so I could get a visual on it and to be able to a little bit further understand what we're talking about here, because there's been a lot of discussion on the various not so much scenarios, but how this plan could be applied, and I'd like some little more clarification on it.
We'll do.
Okay.
We may not come back with a resolution at all, but just maybe more information and clarification and direction. So if that's acceptable, that'll conclude this agenda item, and I have direction, and we can move on to the next agenda item.
Okay, if there's no further questions or comments, thank you very much, Jeff, on your
Thank you, Jeff.
presentation. We'll revisit this at a later board meeting. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the approval and award of bids for the various chemicals that we need to perform our duties here at the agency.
Michael Peak, would you mind providing an update to the board of directors, please?
Good morning, Board of Directors, President Cox. Today, I'd like to bring this item in front of you for approval to award the procurement of hydrated lime, liquid oxygen, liquid sodium hydroxide, methanol, ferric chloride, and liquid chloride. Just to provide a little bit of background, the agency has solicited bids for the purchase of these chemicals. And for the upcoming year, 2021-22, the breakdown is of the submitted bids per chemical is shown below. As you can see, that the breakout here is the low bids have been, the low respective or respected bids have been highlighted and bolded. And you can see that the low respected bids indicate the asterisks. The fiscal impact here shall be dependent on the quantity of purchased chemicals per year as normal. We also provided, last year there was a request to provide a table to show the comparison of the upcoming fiscal year compared to the last fiscal year to show savings or increases in chemical costs. So that chart shows that, and based on that, the recommendation of management and staff is to approve the awarded bids for procurement of the hydrated lime, liquid oxygen, liquid sodium hydroxide, methanol, ferric chloride, and the liquid chloride to the appropriate low respective bidders. Is there any questions or comments on any of that?
Yeah, I got a question, Michael.
I got a question for you here, Mike. You know, there's been a lot of concern, at least this is what I'm hearing down here, about shortages in specific chemicals. And when we approve the purchase on these chemicals, does that guarantee us, Mike, that we're going to have all the chemicals that we need to perform the duties at TTSA for a year? Or do we have a storage facility that we buy these chemicals in bulk, and we actually have these chemicals in our possession to run this plant for a year?
So to answer the latter part of the question, no, we do not have bulk chemical storage to store for a year. We get into these contracts and we basically order as needed. It is considered bulk chemical that we're ordering because of the quantities that we order at a time. But these contracts do help us to ensure procurement of these chemicals and at these costs so that the cost can't fluctuate through the year. But of course, there's always things that can happen in different parts of the states that can impact the availability of some of these chemicals that we have no control over. But my experience has been that the contractors that we use or we work with, these vendors, they do everything they can to try to make sure that we have the chemicals that we've gotten in contract with them to provide to us. And as of this point, we've always been able to provide those chemicals so we could run the plant.
Okay, go ahead, Lane.
Yeah, Michael, I got a question within the industry, specifically with the liquid chloride, there's been a lot in the news about the shortages of that as an industry. Does Thatcher pretty much say that they're okay for the year with that regards to that supply?
We have not been informed that there would be any impacts or that we would not be able to receive basically the 90 tons per year that we order throughout the 12-month period.
Okay, I know in the pool industry they can't get chlorine, so it's just so we are able to, if they do run a shortage, we're able to adjust to it.
And Michael, could you elaborate on the capacities we have? Because we have storage facilities and we have good communications with the vendors. So whenever we're anticipating storms, any breaks in service, we've got good communication with them. They'll work with us, let us know that they're anticipating a delivery issue on this date, so they'll reschedule with us accordingly. We'll also anticipate that if we might encourage a shortage or a concern with the supply, we would go ahead and order more and store it. So if I'm mistaken, Mike, please correct me on that.
No, that is correct. And we have had vendors reach out to us at times and let us know that they are having difficulties procuring chemicals. Just to go back when just on methanol, because a lot of the methanol is trucked from back east, actually comes in train cars from back east. And the vendor reached out and said, we may have troubles based on the fact that hurricane, I can't remember which one it was, came through and had damaged one of their plants. They did give us an indication that if we could order it, sooner, and we had the storage facility and we did that. So there's that communication. Brandon, who does all our chemical ordering, once we procured these contracts, does a great job of, communicating with the vendors and making sure that he's proactive to make sure that we have the chemicals we need to run the agency. Of course, there's no 100% guarantees on anything, but we do everything we can to make sure that we have those chemicals. So.
Well, I think he did a great job in getting, that's the first time I've ever noticed that we have a lower chemical cost based from year to year. So Brennan's doing a good job of getting those quotes in.
Yes, he's been doing a good job. Some of that reduction was the fact that the liquid sodium hydroxide was not under contract last fiscal year when we started using it on the effluent for pH control. So we were actually being charged about $416 per ton. And through this, since we did go out to bid this year, we had a lot lower bid at $283 per ton. So some of that was, those cost savings were based on that. If we would have continued without a contract, that's the savings we got for going into a contract. So but yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase next of the procurement of hydrated lime, liquid oxygen, liquid sodium hydroxide, methanol perchloride, and liquid chloride.
Second it.
Okay, are you all right with that, Dan? David, any comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor from Director Lewis and a second from Director Treason. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item in section 5 is agenda item number 4, approval to award the 2021 asphalt ceiling project.
Jay, would you mind providing an update to the board, please?
Yep, no problem. Good morning, directors. So on May 29, we received 3 bids on the project we described last month, which was the 2021 asphalt ceiling project. This project, in summary, provides 2 seal coats to the plant site, as well as out Butterfield Drive, 332,000 square feet of asphalt pavement. In addition to that, routing and filling of cracks with crack filler and traffic striping. If approved by the board, the work would occur between August 16 and September 3rd. 3 bids were received. The lowest bid was blacktop sealing and striping. Their bid on review was found to be responsive and responsible. The total bid price is $97,500. That's less than both the budgeted amount of $100,000 and the engineer's estimate of $100,000. So the recommendation is for approval to award the 2021 asphalt ceiling project to blacktop sealing and striping in the amount of $97,500.
Jay, I got a question. Jay, what's the, I mean, are we doing it every 4 years, 5 years, 6 years?
So
How often?
the last project was 2017.
Okay.
On average, it's 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
But we time it with other work that's ongoing with the plant. So, you know, we don't say it exactly every 3 years because on the 3-year mark, you know, there may be some other project that is in conflict with it, but
Okay.
approximately 3 to 4 years.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll move approval.
Okay, any further discussion? Wilkins, any comments?
I'll second Lane's motion.
Okay, Blake, any comments? Smeltzer?
Oh, that's fine.
We have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the contract to blacktop ceiling for $97,500. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item, approval to solicit bids for the 2021 digester scanning and sewer line project.
Again, Jay, if you don't mind, would you provide an update?
Sure. So the item is for the digital scanning work. It's coming up this fall, as is customary every fall. We scan the line, scan the section of the pipeline. So this year it's sections 3 and 4, schedules 3 and 4, which those familiar with the river corridor is between Bridge 6 and South River Street. Schedule 5, there's a few sections that, as explained last month, that the last year's contractor was unable to scan. So we're going back and scanning those as well. Project field work is scheduled between September 7 and October 15. Engineer's estimate is $175,000. There is a map included, enclosed with your packet that shows visually which sections we're scanning. So management and staff recommend approval to solicit bids for the 2021 digital scanning of sewer lines project. Any questions?
I got a question, Jay. With regards to the TRI, can we get a map that shows the diameter of the pipes along the TRI
Sure.
for next month?
Yes.
Thank you.
Blake, any comments?
No, I'll make a motion if we're ready.
Okay, Smeltzer, any
No,
comments?
Nope, I'll second.
I just got one question before we continue here, Jay. When we do these scannings, then we've been doing this for a number of years now. Do we log the films or the cassettes or whatever it is that is provided to us, and are we able to go back and look at and judge deterioration in any of these lines?
Yeah, so we store these scans on the server. They arrive by way of hard drive because they're very large. The digital scanning software and files associated with these are quite large. So in order to be readily accessible to staff, we've found it, more productive just to put it onto our server. And so, yes, they're available at any time to go look. And yeah, one of the tasks that our engineering group does is after we get the scans is we do, a comparison with past scans in that same section to look to see if there's any deterioration in that section or new conditions that might be there, those kind of things. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Lane, you had a comment?
Yeah, Jay. With regards to the bidder, I mean, obviously we've done the same bidder the last couple of years, correct?
Well, so no, last year we actually had a different bidder.
Okay.
And we are having some delivery issues from that bidder. There were some problems with the product that they've delivered, that we've kicked it back to them, and they're in the throes right now of addressing those concerns. But we have
my concern is that if we have a different bidder, how effective are they as far as the overlap from the previous 3 years and looking at going to the right spot if there's a situation? I mean, is it easy to do with one file from one bidder as opposed to a file from another contractor, I guess?
Yeah, so, the reach is always going to stay the same footage and stay the same, the location, the start and end manhole, those things. So side-by-side comparisons aren't that difficult. But what we are addressing in this most recent version of the contract documents is trying to avoid some of the problems that have come up this year with this new contractor, and to make sure that moving forward that we aren't running into these kind of problems with the deliverable that they have. So it's all manageable. It's all correctable. We just have a new player in town, and that new player, we just need to make sure that they understand what the expectations are for deliverables. And it is all in the specs. It's just if they were clearly reading the specs, it would be obvious to them, but not everybody clearly reads the specs, so unfortunately.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the proposal for $175,000 is the estimate from our in-house engineers. No further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Yes. With a motion from Tristan, a second from Smelser, we have Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you.
Next item is item number 6. Approval to issue a request for proposal for pre-treatment program review services.
Jerry, do you mind addressing this one as well, please?
Yep, no problem. So, yeah, since LaBru got here, and actually just over the years, we've been going through systematically through all our plans and programs and reviewing them, making sure they're up to date, that there are no new changes that we need to be aware of, any improvements identified and made to the programs. And so the last time the pre-treatment program was reviewed was in 2015. We feel it's time to now embark on another review of that program. So we have developed an RFP for a consultant to review the pre-treatment program in its entirety and make sure it's compliant with all the most updated recent regulations. The RFP is attached to the packet, which contains all the work that's contemplated. The work would occur after the award of the successful proposer and provided that negotiations are successful with that bidder. So the recommendation here is for management and staff to approve issue of the RFP for pre-treatment program review services.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I
Move
got a
approval.
question with regards to this. Why wouldn't this be in addition to, if Corolla's doing the general master plan, why wasn't this included in there?
So the master plan is a very broad overall look, 30,000 foot view of the plant, what our needs are, what the condition is, et cetera. The pre-treatment program would be something where to look at that level within the master plan was well beyond the scope of what Corolla was asked to do within that. You could think of the master plan as a document that propels the agency in the future in terms of how we fund capital projects. It was actually the organizational assessment that identified that we should be looking at things like programs like the pre-treatment program and others, but neither of those level of efforts included a deep dive into the pre-treatment. It just wasn't part of the scope.
So would they be have the most knowledge with regards to this? Would they bid on it?
I would expect that they would bid on it. I would expect that other consultants would bid on it. We were going to advertise for this.
Okay.
Are they better positioned? Not necessarily. There are a lot of consultants out there that do wastewater, that know wastewater, know pre-treatment. So we're just going to advertise this and see what comes. I'd expect that we'd be getting a bid from Seastrom Hill as well.
Okay.
Not a bid, a proposal.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Blake.
So Jay, it's a very well-written RFP, very comprehensive. Sounds like it's going to be a fairly significant effort for the consultant to do it. I don't know if you have an estimate of their cost. I'm going to ask a couple more questions. I guess, 90+% of our, constituents are residential homes. We don't have any industry really in our service areas. I'm just curious what you see, what's driving the need for this pre-treatment, and, are there examples of things that you guys have specific concerns about? Because none of that is really highlighted in that. I could see in an industrial city, but we're a second home. We have restaurants and we have houses. What is the need for such a in-depth pretreatment program?
Yep. Okay. So couple things. One is we're guessing that we're in the neighborhood of maybe 150 to 250 because it's a comprehensive review. A lot of aspects to this. That's 150,000 or 250,000. Just for the record, I know you knew that. With respect to why have a pretreatment program, we're actually required under our WDRs to have the pretreatment program. So yes, we are primarily residential, but that being said, we do have proposed industries or customers that knock on our door and say, hey, we'd like to, we're exploring the idea of starting a new business. And, some examples that have come up in the past are, breweries, distilleries, all the way down to we've had photo labs. That's been a while. That's back in the day when people were printing photographs. So you have these businesses that wouldn't necessarily be considered heavy industry, but they do discharge. They do have potential to discharge constituents that would exceed what we call our local limits, or might fit into something called a categorical standard, a categorical user. Those are probably going to be few and far between, but if we didn't have a program like this, first of all, we'd be in violation of the WDR. Second of all, that we're better positioned to handle potential future industries that might be looking into moving into the area.
That help you?
Blake, I'm sorry, you're muted.
I apologize. You think you'd figure that out? It just seems, I appreciate the comprehensive nature of it. I just wonder whether or not, we'll have to see when the proposals come in, whether it can really, whether you're going to end up having to deal with, case by case examples anyway. I just want the money, spent well. And how much do you foresee, just representing one of your member agencies? There's a reference in there to the pretreatment program and the possible impact on the member agencies. Is this something that TTSA is going to be fully responsible for, or is some of that burden on pretreatment, which is our collection system, or the member agency collection systems, is some of that burden possibly falling back on the member agencies?
Well, so the member agency aspect of this is that we don't really have any direct customers, right? For TTSA, that they're indirect. For example, a restaurant or an industry in Truckee would be TSD's customer first and our second. So we would first want to be in concert that any changes that are made to the program that TSD doesn't have any heartburn over. But there could be things like when it comes to enforcement, if we have to go in and if say we have a major process upset, and that's tied back to a customer in a particular district, we aren't going to go in alone. We would want to do that in concert with our member district. And so we'd probably want some agreements between our districts to make sure that your understandings are our understandings, and that our legal is in coordination with your legal. And so we don't anticipate like that this would change, like a proposed industry would come in and ask for a review. TTSA and its consultants would be doing most of the review. Obviously, that's from a pretreatment aspect. There's all these billing issues in terms of how many sinks and toilets and all that stuff. Of course, member districts would also be involved in. So we don't anticipate much different in the way things have happened to date, but what we got when we were developing the RFP is that it's very common in a joint powers authority, to have these agreements between districts, to make sure that everybody's on the same page, so to speak. With respect to your question about case by case, this is not meant to address the case by case issues. This is meant to be a review of the entire program to make sure there's no deficiencies. The case by case is an ongoing follow-up item where sometimes if it's easy, agency staff would be able to address the case by case, but often we will engage the services of a consultant on an on-call basis to look at a proposed discharge if we have if there are some red flags going up. Does that answer your question, Blake?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still struggling with the size of the project, given our constituent base and, the ability to, just alternative ways of developing reviewing your pretreatment program. So at this point, I guess my comment would be I'm okay with, I'd probably approve of soliciting the RFPs, but I'll be interested in seeing the responses and the cost and talking more with you guys about this as if this is really the best use of agency funds for this.
Blake,
Okay.
Oh.
Any other contributions? Go ahead, Dan.
I think what I'm hearing from you, Blake, is, okay, we need to have a pretreatment program as part of our waste discharge requirement. But if individual dischargers are likely going to require a case-by-case review anyway, let's not spend any more money than is needed to maintain compliance with our waste discharge requirements and focus more on the case-by-case consideration that will end up needing to occur anyway. Is that?
That's part of it, Dan. Yeah. And I mean, I assume we're already in compliance. I don't think there's no mention that we're out of compliance. It's a good forward thinking plan, LaRue's, trying to keep things up to date, walk through them. It just, I don't know that, and I appreciate the comprehensive nature of it. I just don't know that you couldn't go to some other, collection agency that's got a pretreatment program and kind of piggyback on theirs, and for a fraction of the cost, get this, because I think a lot of the stuff's going to end up being case-by-case examples when the dialysis, if there were specific items that we knew were coming and wanted to get, advice on, we should specify that in there. But it seems like for a generic plan for a community that's primarily residential and restaurants, it seems like a lot of money. That's my concern.
Yeah, and we don't know the exact cost yet, so maybe we'll be surprised. But also the what had been done in prior work, I know, is to reach out to other member districts or other entities, like you're saying, Dan. But what we have right now is an ordinance that establishes what's all entailed in the program, and when you distill down what kind of the major portion of work is that ordinance sufficient? Is it up to date? Is it in compliance with the current, EPA regulations? Are there, the pretreatment experts, do they see any deficiencies in here? Are there any parts of the plan that we need to, focus more attention on? In the organizational assessment, it became clear that, our small engineering group, this was something that, we can manage the program on day-to-day, small little things, but in terms of having the technical knowledge of what all needs to go in a pretreatment program, that's beyond our knowledge. So, it's ensuring that our program is up to date, and where it's not, where we're deficient, how do we need to bring it up? What elements do we need to bring up to stop? That kind of thing.
So despite all my concerns I've raised, I'll make a motion to direct staff to solicit this RFP. I'll just be curious to see how high it comes in, and perhaps we can have some discussions at that point.
Second.
Thank you, Blake. Need a second. Is that
Yes,
Wilkins?
Yes.
Seconded by Wilkins. No further questions or comments. Anyone? Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Let's move on to item number 7, approval to issue a request for proposals for SCADA and IT master plan.
As part of the organizational report a few months back, prepared by Corolo, they recommended that the agency consult with a third party to develop a SCADA and IT master plan to assist the agency in implementing industry IT SCADA best practices and refocus IT for increased enterprise systems support. The RP is attached. The major tasks within it are project management, a system-wide SCADA and IT needs analysis, SCADA and IT hardware review and assessment, software review and assessment, server and network equipment review, organizational and operational assessment, security assessment, and then a final master plan report. As part of the efforts to have the agency look within itself to see where there's areas of improvement, I think this is something that we had discussed previously in the past. It's a good plan. It doesn't indicate that there's any shortcomings. It just gives us second eyes on here. And with that, I recommend that the board adopt, will allow us approved to submit a request for RP for the SCADA and IT master planning services. With
Any
that,
questions?
take questions.
Move
Any
approval.
questions? Go ahead, Dan.
Move approval.
We've got a motion on the floor from Wilkins to approve.
I'll second.
Seconded by Smeltzer. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Final item on the agenda is presentation of CMMS and GTS software programs.
A few months back, there was a request to have, or actually last month, to have staff back at the board meeting to provide a little presentation and a description on our current CMMS and GIS software programs. We'll have Richard Plante, maintenance manager, and Jay Parker, engineering manager, provide the demonstrations. So with that, I'll hand it over to Richard, and he'll share a screen and provide some information to you. Go ahead, Richard.
We're firing up here. Good morning, President Cox and Board of Directors. Thank you for an opportunity to highlight the efforts of staff. I know in the computerized maintenance management software side of things, or CMMS, it's been touched by all hands here in the maintenance department, whether it be data collection, data review, validation, or input. So as the agenda item states, we're going to have a presentation on the CMMS as well as the geographic information system, which will be done by Jay, and that's the AIMS software. So I'll just dive right on in here. To give a little bit of background, the agency has historically been using a plant information system that has been developed, created, developed, and implemented by in-house staff. And through the reviews of where the agency is going with master plan, management staff decided that it would be most beneficial for the agency to go with a commercially available product. So we researched the available products that are out there, and we purchased, the board authorized us to purchase Lucity, which since our purchase has been acquired by Central Square, which is a large software company that provides 911 dispatch and financial softwares. They acquired Lucity to bring in the asset management side of their various packages. So that gives a little bit of a background. We're using it currently for fleet and TRI maintenance as we're continuing to build the plant side of the system. We have some future phases that are part of this, which is one is to integrate it with Cassell, our new financial software, as well as the GIS system that Jay's going to demo here in a few minutes. So I apologize, doing a flyover on software can be a little bit dull. It's going to be a lot of clicking by me and a lot of quick movements. So if I go too fast, please slow me down. Or if you have any questions, just interrupt me and I'll give you an answer if I can. So just to give an overview, here's a home screen. As you can see, there's, as most new softwares are, they use icons to highlight things. So up on the top right, we have some various icons that give us open the admin portal. Since I'm an administrator, I have that icon, a scheduler icon. We're not currently developing that. The GIS icon, which will eventually be functional. Direct link to timesheets, which again, as we integrate with Cassell, we may end up bringing in the timesheets from Lucity to populate those as the technicians complete work. External links, reminders, and then the little question mark is just a help. The home screen will be available to all of the users, which will be everybody in the facility, and they can customize this view to best suit their needs. I have a basic view right now, so I can see some current work orders that are associated to the sewer treatment plant. So you can see it's highlighted over on the left. These are the modules that we'll be using. So I'm just going to kind of dive on in and give you a little bit of how the treatment plant side works and click the asset hierarchy that's getting developed. I am in our eval or our test environment, so it gives us opportunity to develop and test things without the risk of breaking our actual production environment. So you can see it, we have it broken down by our treatment plant, then various processes within the plant. And then I can open up, say disinfection. I'll just open up down at the bottom. And then you can see we have the equipment, which the little icon is actually a little jackhammer if you're wondering. And we have 50 pieces of equipment in there, and I can further drill down on that. And then I can see each one. And then if I want to open up one, I can just click on it and it's going to open up the asset data page or a link to it. It's got a little folder, so it tells me there's a file available, so I can open that up. And here's the form. Like I said, we're still developing the plant side. I'll show you some more detail on the fleet side of things here in a minute. These forms are completely customizable, and that's what we've been doing. So we can customize it to the data that we want. Again, the system is a commercially available software, so it's geared towards everything from a treatment plant to a park to a water distribution system. So I'm just going to back out of this here real quick. And give you a quick flyover of our warehouse. Just a quick look. I know that we have 3,260 parts. This probably represents about a 60% completion level right now, as our inventory control specialist is entering in. So part of that process is to finalize and create workflows and naming conventions. So you'll see how the naming convention kind of works here. It's noun based, so it's a motor. In this case, I'm looking at this one right here, motor 15 horsepower, tells me the frame. I can open it up again, the folder, to get more information. It'll give me my reorder points so that as we check them out to do work, once we set those reorder points, we'll get an automatic reorder going to restock that. It'll track costs, and I'll show you a little bit of how it tracks costs on work orders here in just a minute. And again, I know I'm moving really quick to kind of give you a quick overview in 10 minutes or so. So I'll back out and we'll dig into just a quick look at the TRI, because that's near and dear to us as well. A little more information here, and it builds it out. In this case, for the sewer side of things, it's a little bit different than the sewer treatment plant in that you don't see that hierarchy available, but we do have, what we've built is a sewer pipe. So I can see we have 186 segments. 202 sewer structures, so that's manholes or control structures, crossover diversion. So I have it further broken down by what type they are. So if I want to look at a telemetry site, I can just come here. It's going to open up the list of telemetry sites, and you can see the pages are very similar from one form of asset to another. So there's that functionality and that ease of use for the end users. So I'll just grab the last one. Actually, I'll grab one that we all know, Granite Flats, very first one. So I can open it up, see the information on it. And then up here in the top with these icons, if I was going to build a new one, just a quick overview, that's the plus one here. The little diskettes are for saving if I make a change. If I want to create a work order, I can highlight the little hard hat. But I want to highlight this one here, which is a piece of paper with a paper clip. That's where we can attach different attachments and have quick reference. So in this case, we can see we have the dip sheet, calibration sheets are attached, photos, whatever we want to attach. We can even do a link to a manufacturer's website if we wanted to. And then I can just click on it, open the attachment. And there's the dip sheet for that location. So now let me get back here. Sorry. Don't want to close everything out on us and have to start over. So there's a quick overview of that, and we can, like I said, we can attach stuff, photos, anything that we want to attach there. And that's available in all of the modules as well. So I'm going to dive into Fleet. Like I said, we've been utilizing Fleet. We have our fleet maintenance worker, or our mechanic is fully utilizing it. And we've been able to utilize him as a test base so we can work out the workflows on how to close out work orders and process work requests. That is a workflow that we'll implement is as work is identified, an individual, which is anyone in the facility, can generate a work request. It then goes through a review and prioritization process, and then would get generated into a work order. So I know we have 73 pieces of fleet equipment. We have them broken down by each department. And I'll just dive into maintenance here. So these are all the pieces of equipment that are assigned to maintenance. And I'll grab my vehicle, for example. And there's a little plus sign here that gives me a different view that I'm going to show you, because if I want to know like what work orders are open, I can click here and see the different work orders that were assigned to it. So I want to grab one that's been completed. But I'm going to show that to you a different way because this link isn't working quite like it's supposed to yet. So here's the actual work order that I was going to show you. Again, I just had to navigate a little bit of a different way, but it shows you some information that would be valuable to us as we oversee the work. It tells me that it's complete. It tells me when it was scheduled to start. I see the priority here was a high priority, which means we needed to get to it within 1 to 14 days is our goal. When the work was done, how many hours the technician spent on it, their labor cost, and then the total cost of that work order. So it gives us the availability to look and assess the overall cost of what we're doing, and then track that out for budgetary reasons in the future. And again, hopefully in the future, we can link this through Cassell and it'll populate the financial data, and those two softwares can work together to provide that information. Just to show you a little more detail of what we can see on the equipment, which I kind of highlighted already with the other. One of our brand new Godwin pumps, as you can see, is in the system already. Again, I get the information here is a little more detailed than what we saw in the other forms. It's just because this is further along. I have the VIN, I have the capacity of the pump at a right here, so I know I can look that up and see it. License plate number, year purchased, There's purchase cost info that will get populated. It's not in yet, but it has that ability, and it is in on some of the equipment. Again, those attachments that exist. So we have the O&M, the spare parts kit that we received with it, pump curve, et cetera, is all able to be attached. Future goals for the software also includes all staff having mobile devices, most likely a laptop, and then we can Wi-Fi throughout the facility so the technicians can see their actual work orders and enter in notes and close out data real time and in the field. So adds that level of convenience and efficiency. Our overall goal to bring the plant, go ahead, Director Smeltzer.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and it says preventive maintenance, but I don't see a schedule. Like we were looking at the vehicle, when the oil filter needs to be changed, when's the oil change? Is that in that?
It is, and I can show you that right now. So what we have is what are considered PMs, right? So those preventative maintenance, the oil change is a prime example. And here's what they look like as we're building them. So I'm gonna grab a spark plug change for it. I can open that up. And we look at PMs as basically an alarm clock to tell us to do something at some given point. And this is what that form looks like. So we can come down and do a timed-based schedule. So maybe I want to do it every month. Maybe I want it on a floating schedule where I want it to be done every 30 days, regardless of when it was last done. Or I can do it based on mileage interval. So that's what triggers that. So again, still staff is still working on developing everything. Our hope, our goal is with the addition of the GIS CMMS individual that we have second interviews for this Thursday, is to have be completely online with a high level of detail input into each of the asset forms within the next 18 months. That might be an aggressive goal, but that's what we're shooting for. I think it's doable. So that's kind of a quick overlook. I think I've been right around our allotted time frame. Any questions that any directors have?
Just a comment that this is a significant undertaking, and I think it's appropriate to get a good inventory of all of our equipment, as well as to better automate a lot of our preventative maintenance and asset tracking activities.
Yeah, I think the asset tracking activities that are on here and having those alarms on here when it becomes, you know, equipment needs upgrades, spark plugs, whatever. I think it makes it an extremely efficient process.
One thing I should highlight with the software, it gives us the availability to integrate it with the SCADA system. So the in-plant equipment will automatically input the run hours and then automatically generate these. So we don't have to have somebody go around and do manual hour reads for the various pumps and everything. So it further gives us availability to automate. And again, it's all about efficiency and best practices in asset management.
Richard, I got a question with regards to this process. I mean, does it tell you as far as our flow meters through the plant, as far as, you know, upgrade, you know, continually taking a look at those to make sure they're functioning and giving us the proper readings?
It does. So the one thing that we have done for the treatment plant side of things is get every piece of equipment that has a compliance nexus, like the flow meters, are input into the system. And yeah, they're triggering the preventative maintenance work orders to ensure we're doing our calibrations per our WDR.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I'd be excited to see when you flesh out the plant further and how that plays out. We use the same software at TSD for our collection system, and it looks like you're rolling that out nicely. I'm curious about the plant part of it, though, and how that plays out. I'm just curious, is there a potential for with, the routine lab stuff have you thought about generating kind of a PM schedule for lab work and using the Lucidity software to try to track that, or does the lab have like its own software system for scheduling and making sure that all that lab work gets done?
I'll defer a little bit of the answer, probably most of the answer, to Michael Peak, but the system certainly is flexible enough to create a time clock for anything you want to do and a work order for anything you want to do. And with the skill set that we have in-house, I can't give enough of a call out to the guys that are working with me to do this. Very highly skilled and able to customize the forms. So there's probably definitely an ability to use it, but I also know there's a lot of softwares that are definitely specifically geared towards the labs, which maybe Michael would want to speak to.
Okay, that's pretty impressive, Richard, to say the least. I was just wondering, does it take, when you update any of these vehicle status or any of this equipment that is on this software, do you have to physically update any of the history behind what's there? How does that work?
Yeah, that is all manually done, and that's going to be the role of the GIS CMMS individual that we are bringing on board. So for example, as we bought the new Godwin pumps, we retired some of the older pumps. We want to save that work history, but we want to flag that piece of equipment as no longer in service. That is manually done. Someone has to go in and then reset that from being an active piece of equipment to retired or scrapped or auctioned, whatever the case may be.
I see. Okay, any other questions for Richard in regards to this software?
President Cox, I just wanted to, Mike, follow up. Michael, can you address the question regarding the laboratory, sir?
Yes, actually, I would, based on the question of scheduling for laboratory testing, I would defer to Jason. Jason, would you like to speak to what your intention is, or what you're planning on for scheduling of laboratory tests and making sure that we meet all our WDR requirements and anything that's in place and anything that you have planned to move forward, any software that you have thought about that might benefit us?
Yeah, no problem. So the industry standard for laboratories is called Laboratory Information Management Software. We call it LIMS. So when you hear me throw that term around, that's what that relates to. So considering all of the requirements that we're going to be moving into, a LIMS really specifically being directed towards meeting those requirements, kind of in the same way that the asset management software kind of creates the roadmap for the maintenance system. The same is true of a LIMS for a laboratory system. So it's pretty specialized. There's always an opportunity for tying two softwares together, and there might be some really cool integration between the existing asset management system, the LIMS system that I would propose, and the Cassell time management system. So obviously any kind of integration is great, but for a laboratory, I'd really be looking more for a specific laboratory software.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Richard.
You're welcome. And so with the conclusion of my presentation, I'll turn it over to Jay for the GIS side.
So again, let me just share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen or no?
Coming up.
Is that a yes?
It's there now, yes.
Okay. So yeah, just building on what Richard presented for asset tracking.
Excuse me, Jay, I don't see the Ames interface. I see a chat window.
Yeah, it's not Ames, it's a chat. So you have to double click when you hit share, you have to double click to select. So if you want to click stop sharing,
Got it.
and then double click the one you want.
There you
That's it. Yep.
And all panelists for both.
Yep, you can see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we good? Okay.
Perfect.
So, yeah, apologize for the delay there. So yeah, to build on asset management, what Richard was discussing, we've had a GIS system built for us by consultant by the name of Ames team. So they built us a GIS platform for the TRI. And to date, all of our TRI management has been done through basically server folders and files. So similar to what Richard presented kind of in the Lucidity, where everything was in folders and kind of that structure. So the issue has been is that those of us that work well with file folders and file naming conventions and all that, it's been great. But a lot of people are actually, more graphical in nature in terms of how they visual in nature and how they see things. So the main Ames portal has been developed. We have yet to roll it out to all staff. We're waiting for this presentation here to do that. And so we have a ribbon up on top, which I'll spend a little bit of time on in the presentation, but I want to first start on the main area, which is the Maps tab. And what you're seeing here is a graphical representation of the Truckee River Interceptor starting here in Tahoe City. Can you see my cursor, my arrow? Okay. Starting in Tahoe City and ending up at the plant. And over that reach, we have 6 schedules. And the functionality through, on the GIS, you can use zooming here. You can use shortcuts to get you places. And then on the left here, you have a bunch of options on how you want to see things on the map. I'm going to start by adding some base image layers. And the first thing I'm going to start with is Hillshade. So what this does is it basically will layer in topography, the lay of the land, if you will, where our tributaries are, where the main drainages are, et cetera. And then you also have aerial photography. So if you wanted to see, more specifics on what was in that area, you could use that feature. And there's going to be a detail one, which I'll show you in a second. I'm going to zoom in on a particular area here. On the TRI, there's again different ways I can zoom in on the TRI, but you can see the purple line here is the TRI, and the red circles are the manholes. And now I'm going to turn on my detailed photographs because you can see it's starting to get a little pixelated here. The detail photographs, what that did is it looked at the corridor of the TRI and added more detailed photographs and photography for that area. And so we have all kinds of other layers that we have on and we can turn off. Like I can turn on my district boundaries here, which will show me the extent of Squaw Valley PSDs, or now Olympic Valley PSD. We need to update that. What the extent of their boundary is, as opposed to the purple, which is Tahoe City PUD, which is responsible for many things along the river corridor. I'm going to turn that off just because that will slow things down in a minute here if I keep that on. But I can.
Hey, Jake, could I interject just for a moment?
Yeah.
So Dale, you've been long kind of pushing us as TTSA to provide some kind of compensation for that sewer line that Squaw rebuilt. What I would propose is that we as Tahoe City PUD could donate our service area that runs up the Truckee River corridor as compensation to Olympic Valley Public Service District. and set things square that way. So we can talk about that more offline.
You're funny.
Hey, it's who wouldn't want land on the Truckee River?
Oh, right.
Go. So, yeah, I'll let you guys battle that out on a different day. But so we also
Thanks,
have,
Jay. Thank you.
Excuse me, Jay, do you mind zooming out and then showing the district boundaries where they get an overall picture in relation to the
so
overlay?
that, this button here, the global, will take me to the full extent here. I'm going to turn off my aerial imagery just because that's going to slow down the refresh rate. And I'm going to turn on my district boundaries. And so here you can see like the green is Squaw Valley, Olympic Valley, the light purple is Alpine, darker purple is Tahoe City, the rose colored is North Tahoe, TSD is yellow, and North Star is this darker green.
Thank you, Jay.
Sure. So going back to this area here, I did want to show that we imported data from the county on parcel information. And we have the ability to look at parcels in the way that they're billed. That's what the color shading is for. You know, green is one style of billing, yellow is one, red's another. And then you can click on any of these parcels, and Dale should recognize this parcel here, but it shows the count of who owns that parcel. You can attach any pertinent documents you might have, probably more on the billing aspect of things, and basic information about those parcels, etc. So that'll end up being a useful tool for several departments here. Going back to the river and the TRI, I'm going to zoom in on the area that we improved. This is the, I should say, Olympic Valley improved with the siphon across the river. There was a new manhole that was constructed, manhole 43A, and there was an existing manhole 43 from which they pumped as a bypass. They pumped from manhole 43 up to manhole 44, which is just off the screen here. It's there. I'm just not going to spend the time because of the refresh rate here. But if I click on manhole 43, it'll tell me what schedule it's in. But if I want details, I can get all kinds of details here in terms of where it is, what schedule it's on, the latitude, longitude, and this becomes important, especially in snowpack if you need to go find a manhole, whether it's a bolted or unbolted lid, what the rim elevation is, the floor elevation, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of information about that manhole. Furthermore, you have documents that pertain to that manhole. So, you know, Richard showed you that there was a dip sheet you could get from that other system. You can also get to from this system as well. In addition, we have war sheets here. If you remember, those are the bypass sheets. So this particular bypass, you know, if you had to bypass manhole 42, you'd go to this war sheet here, would show which bypass pumps you'd want, which hose system you'd want. This is if you're pumping from manhole 41 to 43. So in an emergency, you can quickly go to the war sheet that you need and proceed that way. We also have media. So media often is photographs. So for example, we have downloaded here a photograph of during construction of the Olympic Valley siphon work, as well as many other photos that we have available. It looks like there we go. Okay. So yeah, we've taken photographs through time. We've attached that to the attribute. On the TRI, we can turn off various features that we'd like to see. We have digital scanning observations we can turn on and off. We have sondings that we can turn on and off, and that's what that is where we have located the pipe in space. You know where the manhole is from surveying, but when you're 1,000 feet between your manholes, you may not know exactly where the pipe is. But what we've done over the years is we've located, using sonding device, every 50 feet the location of the pipe underground. And then we also have miscellaneous features. We can turn on our bridges. So those familiar with the area will know that Bridge 2 is how you would access this area. So we just turned on Bridge 2. You can now click on that, the asset of Bridge 2, get details on that, any documents that might be associated with that bridge. For this example, we don't have much. We have ponds. This is for the emergency storage ponds that are up beneath the 267 bypass. We can turn on that information. We have record drawings. So we can, what this does is basically allows you to tap into the record drawings from the graphical interface. And I wanted to just use this as a launching point to show that you can also get to much of this information instead of graphically. You can also go to these pull downs. So if I wanted a record drawing of this area, I could go to the record drawing library. I could pull up our record drawings, and then from there be able to pull up the specific record drawing that I'd want. So we also have accounts, parcels, listed customers. You can inquire by sewers or manholes. If you're interested in manhole 43, you could type in just 43 probably simply here, and it'll filter anything that's associated with manhole 43. So in a nutshell, just wanted to, I think I've reached the end of my time here. Wanted to show we have access to a lot of information, and it's now graphical, so that those that are more visual can get the information this way. Are there any questions?
Jay, will your crews use this for gathering information when when there's an underground service alert and you got to mark your facilities, I imagine will be helpful?
Yeah, they could. So what we've done in addition to these 50-foot sonding latitude, longitude, is we've taken a picture of that sonding with a cone, manhole, with a construction cone, over the location, taken a contextual picture so that you could reproduce where that is in space. So yeah, it could be a useful tool for people in the field. And the idea, this is all web-based. So, with a tablet, with a laptop, you could tap into this information in the field.
Does the agency have good easement records? I saw, you can see the district boundaries, but that TRI line, I imagine, is inside some easement. Is that attached to these as well?
No, so the easements are currently ongoing. I believe it's an admin function to eventually scan those in and get those attached. LaRue, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, so that is the next phase in identifying our pipeline here. Like we have a couple of drawers of easements. Unfortunately, the way easements were titled back in the day, decades ago, it's a little cumbersome. It's not as easy just pulling it out and going here. It's by manhole 43. So it's a tedious process to have staff go through, as you know, read them, draw them out. But the idea is that is one of the next phases out here. We're still trying to work out if that's something that's going to be best handled by the CMS GIS individual, or keep that under the current scope of admin. So it's something we know that needs to be done. We just have not gotten to it. I hope that addresses that. And then the beauty of this is with the presentation of the CMMS and with the Lucy and the Ames, they will be integrated one together. So you'll be able to link from Lucity for the map component module into this. and it'll provide versatility back and forth is the end goal. And then eventually tying in Casella as Richard alluded to.
Nice, thank you.
Any additional questions for Jay or Richard?
Good deal.
Okay, very impressive.
And
Any
if
questions or comments from any of the board members?
I'm impressed.
Seeing none, hearing none. Go ahead, David.
No, I was just saying, I'm impressed. I like this.
I did too.
Yeah, if I may, Dave, I just want to acknowledge all the individuals that have worked on this. It's been Richard and his staff, Jay at the administrative department. It's very easy to click here and go to this drawing and then click on that, but there's a lot of effort in the background being put into this. It takes a very long time to do, but once it's done, it'll be one of the greatest tools the agency would have encountered for in the past. So again, I just want to commend everybody's work on this. It's great. I think it's something that a lot of individuals, districts have started. And if there's any collaboration or work and assistance between the districts and us, we're more than welcome to participate in that.
Okay, any further questions or any comments before we move on to the department reports? Anyone? Moving on. Section 6.
Michael, would you lead the
Good afternoon again, Board of Directors, President Cox. Michael Peak, Operations Department Manager with the April operations report. All plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. Overall, the plant performed well through the month. We've been preparing for the headworks project and painting projects, numerous painting projects throughout the plant, lockout, tag out, numerous things that operations department's doing for those to take effect. We have started the headworks project. It's pretty interesting. If any of you guys like to come out and take a look at that, we are in process of moving forward with that. We performed a shutdown for installation of emergency power shutoff switch. We installed new influent flow monitoring equipment for a trial period. We lowered the plant effluent pH set point from 7.5 to 7.0 and continue to monitor well 31. This is just for your information. For the laboratory, staff performed the necessary laboratory testing per the WDR requirements and operational needs for the month. Staff continue to train the operators for the weekend testing and will be completing demonstration of capabilities for day shift staff and are scheduled to complete prior to the operation shift change. New laboratory director, Jason, is assessing lab testing and evaluating administrative and analytical laboratory SOP needs. We have 6 completed work orders for the month, 4 pending. And as you can see, the plant data below, we met all the discharge requirements again per our limits for the effluent flow. And do you have any questions?
I have a question, Mike.
Go ahead.
You mentioned, I think what I heard you say was at the plant discharge point, over the last few months, you've been adding caustic to raise the pH level at the plant discharge point to, I think, in the 7.5 has been the target range. And I think the goal of that was to put higher pH water into the ground with the hope that after it percolates through the ground for 2 months and then is intercepted at well 31, that the likelihood of well 31 being at a pH level of 6.4, which is just out of compliance, and instead being at a pH level of 6.5 or greater, which is just in compliance, that the likelihood of that would go up. We haven't had any violations for a while. That's good. Whether this is a direct correlation to that is not entirely certain. But I think what you said was that you are now targeting a pH level of 7.0 at the plant discharge point. I'm assuming that's with the goal of adding less caustic to the effluent, which would then reduce the likelihood of having a total dissolved solid problem materialize over time, but hopefully hitting that balance point of pushing the pH level at the plant discharge higher to reduce the likelihood that the well 31 pH level drops down to that 6.4 level. Is that what's going on effectively?
Yeah, that you summarized that really well. I don't think I need to say much more, but no, really, we did during the period that we were putting the 7.5 pH out on the effluent. We monitored well 31, and the monthly average pH was, as I've been reporting, was between 6.5 and 6.6 for the average for the month. We did that for just a little bit over a 4-month period, and then we moved back down to the 7.0 with the neutral water range, and we've been monitoring that since I believe it was a little bit after the 1st of January, and the pH levels average for the month at well 31 continue to be between that 6.5 and 6.6. As you alluded to, we have not gone below the 6.5, down in the 6.4 range, which is great. We continue to monitor, and yes, it was to try to limit the TDS addition to the ground as much as possible. So again, we're we're diligently monitoring and making, we'll make any changes that we need if we see any other impacts from the reduction. If we have to go back up, we will. So, any other questions or for operations department or for lab or anything? Oh, all right. Thank you.
Okay, Richard, you're up.
Morning again, Board of Directors. So maintenance has continued to work with other departments on ongoing large projects that are taking place or are getting scheduled to take place, such as a digester upgrade and line feed system. As far as regular projects, we undertook a replacement of a shop door that was rotted out through the years of service. We did install a FLODAR flow meter unit at our influent sampling station to test it out and see how it works in that configuration. Replaced a smoke detector in a chlorine building, completed some PHA items in a chlorine system, which is the process hazard analysis. Spent significant time de-winterizing the plant, pulling snow poles, snow tires, chains, etc. off of equipment. We did complete our TRI and plant influent flow meter calibrations for this period of time for our biannual. So those are completed with the report back from the third-party company that we used. We did conduct a defensible space tour inspection with the Truckee Fire Department and are now working on a 2-phase approach to do that defensible space and get us where they suggest us to be. So the first phase of that will start taking place here the 1st of June, and we're working on quotes from other contractors to do some maceration of the sagebrush around the facility. Part of the upcoming work for the headworks, we had to repair a gate pedestal on the TRI as we were trying to isolate it. It broke, so staff fabricated and installed a new one. Other than that, 33 work orders for the month for mechanical, 12 fleet, 26 instrumentation, with a current backlog of 116 for mechanical, 22 in fleet, and 67 for E&I, most of those being PM. So we're holding our own there. Any questions that I could field?
Yeah, Richard, with regards to that install, the FLODAR monitoring, what did we have there before, and how did the new one work in comparison to that?
Before, there was no flow meter at that location. The current influent flow meter resides at the headworks. It's a Parshall flume with an ultrasonic head, so it bounces an ultrasonic signal down and only measures depth. FLODAR units use that same technology, but they also use velocity, so they bring in another measuring aspect to that. They're good for certain applications, such as manholes, as long as you can get a clear shot for that velocity meter. So we looked at that location and working with the same company that does our calibrations. They loaned us a demo unit to give it a try, and so far it's been working out really well there. So it's really just a better place to take a measurement than where our current system is. Both of them are tracking almost identical. So accuracy wise, it's really been a nice validation of the accuracy of that meter.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Richard? Seeing none and hearing none. What's up, Jay?
So engineering report for April. We've worked on the projects listed. I just wanted to highlight that we are in start of construction season here. So Headworks Improvements Project, there's been a lot of activity on that over the last several weeks. The chiller replacement project that's gearing up. Plant painting project just kicked off this week. So more to come, but yeah, this will be a busy summer. Are there any questions anybody has on any of the projects listed?
Doesn't look like it, Jay. You're getting off easy.
This month.
Any questions for Jay? Seeing none, hearing none. Bob, you're on.
Okay. Good morning, directors. Besides the day-to-day maintenance of our computer and SCADA equipment, we've been working with E&I on the replacements of the methanol dosing pumps and BNR, integrating the new drives onto SCADA. We've been continuing on bringing more of the safety permits onto our PIS online system, including confined space and electrical work assessment. We've transferred all of our virtual systems to our newly configured hardware infrastructure, which provides for greater performance, redundancy, and security on our new dedicated physical servers. Luke Swan, our newest IT specialist, has been transitioning nicely from a trainee to a valuable member of our development team. Kevin Woods has been doing the heavy lifting and training and has been doing a great job in getting Luke trained in the myriad of duties and responsibilities required by his position. And also, as written in my report, I did apply for retirement in May and will be working through the near end of July. The IT team and I have been working rigorously on the transfer of knowledge and responsibilities for a smooth transition. I would like to address the board at the June board meeting and thanking the board and the friends and coworkers for a great 22-year career here at TTSA. Any questions?
Well deserved, Bob, for all the work you've done. I hope you could truly relax in retirement.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, any further questions for Bob? Then LaRue, you're on.
All right. I have nothing to add to the administrative report other than just to hit the main highlights and summation of all the relief, as I previously spoke earlier in the meeting. Automatic reliefs are now complete for our sewer service relief program to the total of $186,000. So far, we've had for the application-based relief approximately $13,500 approved for the relief program. We've had applications come in and that have been rejected simply because they weren't complete. Celeste is working with the owners to go ahead and complete those accordingly. But overall, the relief program is going well. And the total summation of the relief so far is approximately $200,000. Other than that, there's no additional items to report for the administrative department. I can take any questions if needed.
I have a question, LaRue. It may actually be more for Jay. It's not on a direct report that I just got, or we just got. It's a question regarding the plant expansion that was done maybe 15 years ago now. My understanding was that when that plant expansion was done, what TTSA did was to work with all of the member agencies to gain an understanding as to what they believe the build out potential was of for new land development within each of the member agencies, and then to project effluent flow that would result from new development that happened, that was expected to happen in the future, and then to size the plant to be large enough so that it could accommodate all of that projected future effluent without the need to then do another supplemental future plant expansion. Do I have that right, or am I off base on that understanding?
Yeah, so the original project reports defined what the future flow is going to be, or anticipated to be. And the goal of the expansion project was to expand the facility for a life up to year 2015. Year 2015, it was anticipated that we would reach our maximum flows through the plant, and we need yet another expansion. So kind of what you're describing is a process in which you're going to build a plant and not have to expand it for a long time. That actually it was the opposite. They anticipated that we would perhaps need an expansion as soon as 2015. That was when the economy was going gangbusters back during the planning events. And then the bust happened. The economy tanked, and we saw almost zero growth in our districts. So 2015 came and went, and we're not anywhere near what the trigger point is for expanding the plant further. Even to this day, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still not seeing any big leaps in flow. But anyway, we're even if we're still way below what our plant can handle. I hope that answers the question, but the idea is that when you do these expansions, you do it over a horizon in which you're predicting what your flow is going to be. And we're in good shape there. In fact, any future expansions, are going to be, right now, the prediction is going to be pretty far down the road. And you're probably going to build equalization facilities upstream in lieu of expanding further within the plant, because it's really kind of the peaks that you have to manage. And instead of spending a lot of money building new clarifiers and new O2 basins and new BNR facilities, et cetera, it's far more effective to build equalization facilities to offset that cost. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so when you say an equalization facility, that would be a upstream storage tank, pond, something like that, where you could store peak flow and then run it through the plant during less than peak flow periods.
Yeah, so in terms of how you would shuttle the flow back, yes, it would be during less than peak conditions in which you can accommodate, but you'd actually, instead of putting these flow equalization basins somewhere upstream in the collection district, you'd probably want an in-plant here, because it's a benefit to be able to go through some level of treatment to knock out the real nasty stuff, so that you're just shunting water over to the basins. Still needs further biological treatment, et cetera, but
I see.
It's probably somewhere within plant.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no further questions on the management department reports, we'll move on to board of directors comments.
Wait a second, what about the general manager's report?
I'll do the GM report quite quickly, Dale, President Cox. For item 6.2, the GM report, I have nothing in addition to add, just more clarification. We have hired, as you know, the laboratory director, the CMMS, a GIS technician. As Richard has stated, is slated for the second interview. The agency is still in the process in the recruitment process for the assistant/associate engineer. And I wanted to report that we have made an offer to an individual for the finance and administrative department manager position, and they have accepted. They will start June 1st. So when that individual comes on board, they'll hit the ground running, assisting with budgets and other financial matters, and I'll be able to introduce them at the upcoming June meeting. I just wanted to also acknowledge some efforts by staff, primarily the accounting department. They've been hammering away, maintaining the regular business and then assisting managers with the budgets. Celeste for the billing department to continue applying and implementing the relief program solely. And also for the IT department, with the announcement of Bob's departure, the IT department and Bob have had to work together to prepare for his retirement. So they've stepped it up, and I appreciate all their efforts there, including Bob's. So then I really have nothing else to report. The general manager's report, and I can take any questions.
Yeah, I got a question. I thought this associate engineer position was going to take place after we got, with regards to getting the Corolla report in and seeing what type of estimated projects we had for the future. Do we have that much on the table to where we need that position at this point?
Yeah, even with the current projects, our engineering department is slammed. They have all of us have very little time to contemplate and breathe. So yeah, it's even with the current workload, we need the help.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what I understood when the position was putting in place. And also that we're doing a lot of outside, putting a lot of stuff outside work. How cost effective is that as far as bringing on another person?
Well, go ahead, Liber.
I think some of the intent was, in lieu of subbing some of the work out, was to have some of that performed in-house, like I said, in lieu of subbing it all out.
In addition to that, complex jobs that are subbed out, you still need, it ends up being a lot of work on our part, nevertheless, in terms of interfacing, being the liaison, getting the consultant what they need, reviewing the documents to ensure they're accurate. And the stuff that we sub out is stuff that is beyond our capabilities. We do hold a lot of pride in trying to get as much done in-house as we can. So yeah, we just have a large.
Is this new associate engineer position, are we getting any new qualifications to help out with what's the work that's going to be required coming forward, to where we're not going outside for so much work?
Well, so the problem there is that you end up with, if you end up hiring a structural engineer, an electrical engineer, to round out, where we're weak, you end up having to, these engineers don't have much to do a lot of the time. So then you have them on payroll, and you're not being very efficient that way. So jobs that are heavy in these other disciplines, it's more effective for us to sub that out, or simply the job is too large. If it's a 30 to 40 sheet, 50 sheet job, we just don't have capacity for that size of a project. Our bread and butter is around 10 sheets or less. So it has to do with size of the work and complexity of the work.
Yeah, I was just under that. I mean, I'll ask the other directors. I mean, weren't you under the same assumption that we weren't going to hire an associate engineer till the time we see the Carrillo report and what we have for the future work as far as within the district?
That was not my understanding, Lane.
Okay.
My understanding was that we were expecting, my personal understanding is that I was expecting that we are going to have lots of projects coming up, and that the Carrillo report will better define which projects should be done first, sooner rather than later, but that we won't have a vacancy of work or a dearth of work for a new person. It's just a question of exactly what they'll be working on. That was my understanding.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Go ahead, Blake.
I guess just, and I don't want to get this into a prolonged conversation, just we're in this odd transition period with COVID and with the state theoretically opening things up in the middle of next month in the board meeting following the day after that. I just want to emphasize that I would err on the side of safety and am fine with, however many more of these Zoom type meetings. I look forward to getting back, but if there is a decision point out there, with regards to board meetings and staff stuff, I counsel LaRue to err on the side of safety. As long as you can keep things going, keep it safe and go there. So
If I may, I fully intend to have the June meeting done virtually, simply because although the state has stated what they intend to do, we comply with Cal OSHA. We haven't heard from them yet either. And because we have to submit our board packets out and post our agendas, I don't want to commit to something that might change at the last minute. So the intent is to have the June 16th meeting virtually and then assess how the matters are proceeding for the July meeting.
thanks, LaRue.
Anything else? Can we do board of directors comments now, Lane?
No such comment at this point.
Okay. What about you, David?
Oh, I'm good.
Blake? You're good? Dan?
None from me. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we've completed everything on this month's agenda. What I'd like to do is entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make that motion to go into closed session.
Been moved by Director Lewis.
Second.
Seconded by Director Smeltzer. Roll call, please.
That second was by Director Wilkins. I'll make that correction really quick. So we have Director Wilkins. Roll call.
Yes.
Director Smeltzer.
Yes.
Director Tresson.
Yes.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
And President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved for meeting adjournment.